Mahana kia koutou, kua tai mai ki tēnei hui, I te kaupapa mātua o State Highway 5. Tēnā koutou in ngā raurangatira, o ngā kainehera o Tarohi, o te mātua Māui. Welcome everyone, to my fellow councillors, your worships. Tēnā koe e kiri. And as we discuss this important kaupapa of speed limits and future investments on State Highway 5, Api, I'm wondering if I could call on you to formally open the meeting with a karakia.
Ki noi tātou. Pai te korore o te atua I runga rawa, maunga rongo ki te whenua, whakaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa. To God Almighty in the highest, peace on earth, goodwill amongst all mankind. Nā reira, hangai te atua e nā ka hau ki roto ki tēnā o mātou. Whakatungia tō wairu tapu hei awhina, hei tohu I a mātou mahi katoa, ko ehu kraiti hoki tō mātou ariki. Āmene.
All right, now just in terms of apologies, the only apology that I'm aware of is Councillor Taylor. And we have Councillor Lambert waiting in the wings outside for his vaccination pass to arrive in order that he can get in. It's with his cell phone, which is not with him, I understand. It's on its way. All right, look, just on the...
Just further to that, Mayor Wise was hoping to come, but she's had another meeting.
All right, thank you for... All right, should we move that the apologies be received? Would someone like to...
Happy to move.
Mayor Hazelhurst, seconder. Thank you, Councillor Price. All in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? Carried. Okay. I just want to, in turning to item 2, conflict of interest declarations, just make this point. As I see it, there is inherent to this meeting, indeed the structure of the committee, particularly as it relates to this decision, an element of conflict in that we are dealing with a decision made by one of the voting members of the committee, a decision which was opposed in submissions by other voting members of the committee. But I think to grasp the nettle here, and in the interests of promoting a robust discussion that's meaningful in terms of a position to adopt on a regional basis, it would be inappropriate to deprive those two parties in particular of an opportunity to speak. For that reason, I am minded to move under clause, I think it's 3.5 of the standing orders, that clause 19.8 be suspended for the purpose of this meeting to enable Wakakotahi through Linda, who we're very pleased to have with us over there and on the screen, and any submitting councils, including Hastings District, to participate and vote. If I move that and it is seconded, there is then no debate on that motion. If a 75% majority of the voting members endorse the motion or vote for the motion, it is carried. Before I so move, just as an indication, if I could litmus test, sniff test the room, has anyone got an objection to me making that motion? Right. I would like to move that clause 19.8 be suspended for the purpose of this meeting to enable Wakakotahi, Hastings District Council and any other submitting entities who are voting members or otherwise present to participate in the meeting and vote on any motions passed. Would someone please, would anyone be prepared to second that? Thank you, Councillor Price. The motion is moved and seconded. All in favour?
Aye. Aye.
Are there any voting members against? It is unanimous. All right, well that's dealt with that and I'm grateful to everyone. Before we move to item 4, I just think we need to, as the agenda records, approve the minutes of the 3 December meeting of the committee. Is anyone prepared to move that they are a true and correct record of that meeting who was present? Goodness gracious. Am I allowed to move that? Thank you. Councillor Kerr. Anyone willing to second that motion? Councillor Price?
Geez, busy day.
I don't want to force anyone into it. I'll second it if I'm able to.
Councillor Price, just
Okay, all right. All in favour? Anyone against? Carried. Okay, so before we call on Kitty Goodspeed, who's requested and I have approved under, I think it's clause 15 of the standing orders, a deputation to speak, I just wanted to make sure everyone in the room understood how we intend to operate today relative to items 4, and I can take my mask off. What else am I doing? Items 4 and 5. So the process, we're allowed to take our masks off as we are seated at our tables as for a restaurant. And yeah, so that's my understanding of the protocols of this chamber as determined by the council. So my advice from the Governance Committee,
So, through you, Mr Chair, I just wondered if Deputy Mayor Tania Kerr, as also ward councillor for this area, would be able to ask questions through
At this
this
point,
process.
or-
No, through the process.
all right, well, we'll come to that. I just wanted to outline the process as I intend it to be, so we're all clear about that. Firstly, we would, as the convention of this council, hear from a deputation first, and we would then move to hear the agenda paper, question the reporting officer, and then move into discussion before putting motions and debating them. The way I intend to run the meeting today, unless there's any objections, and I have shared this with you, is that we would hear from Kitty, and then I would actually like to hear from Linda Stewart, who would give us a briefing on the decision. There would be, for both Kiri and Linda, what I would call moderated opportunity for questions, with leave from me as to Kiri, and I also want to be reasonably sort of firm about the opportunity for questions from of Linda. I don't want this to descend into a form of inquisition, but if you have a question that you really must understand the answer to that she hasn't covered, in order for us to, or for you to then be able to speak to the terms of reference of this meeting, then please feel free to ask it. I think I've just heard from Councillor Kerr that she would like to ask questions, as well as perhaps Mayor Hazelhurst. What I would like to do after and that's fine, as I say, but I will be moderating that. As I say, I don't want this to turn into a cross-examination or something like that. And then what I would like to do once we've heard from both Kiri and Linda is we would, and welcome of course to all of our advisory members, go around the room, and I'm actually going to start with the advisory members so that we get the advice. Actually, there's a step missing. We need to hear from Craig Thur's reporting officer and ask him any questions. We have, and then as we move into item 5, once around the room, as I say, starting with the advisory members, 5 minutes each. It's not a straitjacket, but it's a fairly firm guideline. And once we've heard that, it may be helpful for Linda to have a brief right of reply before motions of any kind as to the position of this committee and steps forward are put. I will invite you each as you speak to share towards the conclusion, or as part of what you say, what you think our position should be on the decision, whether it's to support, oppose, outright or on some qualified basis, and what you think we should resolve as a committee to do about the situation relative to the position adopted. I'll try and assimilate all of that. Once we've heard from everyone, we can put a motion or motions up, and at that point we're into the debate, and we'll take it from there. All right, so is that reasonably clear? Now, I had hoped that perhaps we've got Mayor Walker from Central Hawke's Bay, that's fine. We've got Councillor Price from Napier City.
We've just had Craig Little has just appeared on the screen.
And we've
He's
got,
having trouble getting it.
welcome your worship, we've got
Kia ora.
Mayor Little from Wairoa. So, yeah, the idea would be that sort of one representative from each of the local authorities, but I think you can persuade me otherwise, and I've just had a request for both Councillor Kerr and Mayor Hazelhurst to ask questions of Linda Stewart. So is that all clear? Has anyone got anything about that they'd like to raise with me before we call Kerry up for the deputation? Right. Koe hoki anō. Kerry, I think you are sitting in the corner at the far end of the room. We're very grateful to have you. Thank you for your request for a deputation. And the floor is yours. The convention is 10 minutes under the standing orders, but you don't have to fill the container, just see how you go. Thank you very much.
Firstly, I'd like to thank you very much, Councillor Martin Williams, for this opportunity to address the regional leaders. I would like to also announce the extension of the petition that has been launched on the 12th of the 1st of 22. The new closing date will be the 18th of February 22. The voting journey for me only really began in late December when I became so passionately incensed by the timing of NZTA's decision announcement. On January the 15th, we held a community meeting in Tipahui where I received a unanimous mandate from our Tipahui and districts community to advocate and to make complaint on their behalf. It helps me to know that I have the complete faith and confidence and mandate of my community and my neighbours. They are at the forefront of my mind in that they are the first responders to horrific road incidents. It is their stock fences destroyed constantly and consistently without compensation. The social and economic effect of this speed reduction decision will impact on all residents, from early risers to work in town or forecasted loss of income from logbook restrictions and increased travel time for others. During the intervening month of my involvement, I have come to listen, hear and research and read so many diverse viewpoints on the speed decision through Tony, or also known as Axel Alexander's State Highway 5 Issues Facebook page, increased membership of over 2,500 members during this month, a Facebook poll of a total of 2,752 respondents at closing on the 26th of the 1st, had a result of 96% of those people who responded were opposed to the speed decision. It is apparent from the membership that a real fear exists of potential loss, risk of fatalities restarting on this road with driver frustration, revisiting road toll statistics of 1973 when the road deaths shot up to 281 per million, which is 4.5 times higher than the road toll for 2021. Why is that? Because we reduced the speed nationally from 50 miles per hour to 80 kilometres per hour with the change from empirical to metric. The driver frustration at the time increased the risk of for drivers making poor decisions, which resulted in death and injury. There is, I believe, a vacancy, a void, a vacuum that exists for communications and engagement for NZTA in Hawke's Bay. I know that there is a vacancy because they've advertised it. I was quite tempted to apply for that role as Senior Advisor for Communications and Engagement for Hawke's Bay NZTA because I think they need some help. Following the advocates meeting last week with MPs in NZTA, I woke in the early hours of Saturday morning and wrote an impassioned letter. And it may well serve as a good cover letter, and it is addressed to Miss Linda Stewart. Here we go. I admire your bravery, Linda, for having entered the lion's den and given face to NZTA. I challenge you now to be even braver. Given the outcomes or lack of outcomes from the discussions with MPs, I would ask for the Relationships Manager to take time to reflect. Come back and provide us with some answers, and while you do, save us the heartache, the time and the expense of injunction, and injunct the NZTA State Highway 5 speed reduction decision yourself. The signs, the 80k signs, they're in place. They're covered, awaiting your gazetted notice of this change on the 18th of February. There would remain the phantom of road safety risk, but no further actual cost or damage for your self-imposed injunction other than to your pride. Reflect upon your consultation process with tangata whenua, with community and with regional leaders. Reflect on whether the fine balance was weighed between economic effect and road safety. Reflect on the zero record of the last 16 months achieved by targeted enforcement and your own targeted maintenance. And when your time of reflection is ended, and with absolute certainty and complete transparency, you are prepared to answer this community and this region, and even the nation's growing concerns and questions, hand on heart, analysis and evidence to the forefront, convince us. National policy influenced by international evidence does not need to be patted into my head by nanny state for the next 5 years at a cost of $117 million. $117 million on advertising and education on the importance of your safety message. Add that to the $120 million you seem to have plucked out of the air and promised us for this road, and you might just have a new Mohaka bridge. Give this region 1/10 the size of Auckland's population, $1.6 billion, even 1/10 of the budgeted spend on Auckland Light Rail, and we might have a new 4-lane, medium barrier, no traverses or side entrance State Highway 5. What gets me the most is, regardless of the promised money, regardless of the promised improvements and maintenance, you boldly stated that the decision has been made. The decision is permanent and will remain in place after the road's improvement. This unmovable position does not endear me. It does not engender a robust relationship. The relationship you are managing is already fragile. Please, I beg you, do not smash it completely on the rocks of your own intractability. Linda, I admire your bravery. I now challenge your ability to self-analyse and provide transparency. Safety is an important pillar for decision-making, and it is one of the 4 that NZTA are required to lean on for important decisions. As the speed reduction on State Highway 5, when a house's foundations rest so heavily on one pillar and the other pillars have been sunken from view, you hire an engineer and you get the damn house repiled. In conclusion, never in a lifetime would I have ever thought I would be here today discussing soda blasting of pavement to expose aggregate through bitumen, but here I am advocating pavement improvement, crediting the targeted maintenance and targeted enforcement for the reduced road toll and serious injury accidents over the last 16 months. And I acknowledge a period of underinvestment, and I ask for funding to address underinvestment. And I beg you, as our local leaders, in a call to action, please stop this idiocy in its tracks and make a decisive plan to hold NZTA to account for its lack of engagement or consideration for the voice of this community in opposition to the speed reduction on State Highway 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Kerry. Now, I have, under the standing orders, the ability to permit questions to be asked of you, Kerry. Are you willing to take any questions? Does any member, voting or otherwise, have a question of Kerry? Councillor Kerr.
Kia ora. Kia ora, Kiri. You spoke of the community's fear that this is going to increase the number of accidents. Can you please expand on that further?
The community have spoken both through Facebook, social media, and at our community meeting. They have spoken of the risk of driver frustration due to long lines of traffic being stuck behind vehicles that will be travelling at a slower speed than 80 k's. It's quite a well-known fact that traffic will sometimes travel up to 10 kilometres less than the posted speed limit. There is a lack of passing lanes or slow vehicle bays on this road that would allow traffic to pull over safely and allow other vehicles to pass them.
Thank you.
Mayor Hazelhurst.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation, Kitty. You talked about engagement with mana whenua. Could you expand on that and advise the committee how or not we had engagement, waka kotahi engage with mana whenua? Thank you.
Firstly, I'd like to clarify that I have been given mandate to speak on behalf of the community and residents of Tipahui and Kia Roto. However, I do not speak on behalf of any iwi entity today. It has become clear from the summary of consultation provided by NZTA that they have not engaged with Tūwhare Toa, with Mangahururu Tangitu or with Ngāti Hini Uru during the course of their consultation.
And just further to that, Kiri, you had a meeting with the local MPs, and was that raised at your meeting?
Yes, we did have a meeting with MPs, and Robin Rona was present from Ngāti Hini Uru. She's the CEO of their post-settlement iwi trust. She made it very clear, and I absolutely support and tōtoko her statement. Those iwi entities were not consulted as part of that consultation process from NZTA.
All right. Perhaps we could leave that there. Thank you very much indeed, Kiri, for your impassioned plea to galvanise not only waka kotahi into some form of reconsideration, but also your regional leaders to hold them accountable. That was heard very clearly. Now, Linda the Brave, and I don't mean to be facetious in saying that, but thank you indeed for being here as Relationship Manager. The floor is now yours, and I think in fairness, an equivalent amount of time. I do have a hand up from Mayor Little, I think. Did you have a question you wanted to ask?
Yeah, just a very quick one. Just first of all, congratulate Kitty on her presentation. That was pretty awesome and pretty well says what everyone's saying. Just Keith, are you in my seat? Those are big boots to fill, mate. I'm away for 5 minutes and you're in my seat. But I travelled the road the other day for the first time from Taupo to Napier, and I was absolutely impressed with the road, impressed with all the warning, the yellow signs, and I didn't think there was a problem with the road at all. Comparing it to the roads I normally travel all the time, and that's on State Highway 2 from Gisborne to Napier.
Your question.
The question is, I'm getting to that, Martin.
Good.
The question is, do you think the road is adequately signposted and warning signs are enough to ensure that it is travelled safely?
Was that question to me?
Yes, that was. I apologise. We've just jumped back. I didn't see, because we were doing this partly virtual, I didn't see the hand.
I thought I was being ignored.
No, it's not deliberate.
In 2018, in 2020, there was a significant amount of deaths on our road, and there was a significant number of sites that were identified by Axel or Tony Alexander. He took Oliver postings across the road, and there was a $4 million spend on safety features such as signs and some side barriers that have actually saved a few fences along the way. Do I think there's adequate number? Look, with the decision to reduce the speed, they have now mounted the posted speed sign every 2.6 kilometres. Do I think that there's enough signage? Possibly. Do I think that there's enough? I admire the Wairau Road, Mr. Little, in that you have plenty of slow vehicle passing bays. None exist on the Napier Taupo Road, and if we are going to be endure the speed reduction, then I believe that's what's required to stop this drive of frustration that will happen and occur. Does that answer your question, or have I gone around it?
Well,
No, that's all good.
I'm happy that was a reasonably adequate answer. Are you happy, Mayor Little? Thank you, Kate Pai. All right. Sorry for, it was by no means deliberate. Now, Linda, as I say, the floor is now yours, and I'd say 5 to 10 minutes, up to you, but you do justice to the decision from your perspective, enable us to.
May I go and sit back over?
You may indeed to have an informed discussion. Thank you, Linda. The floor, so to speak, is yours.
Kia ora, thank you. I'm just going to try and share my screen, so please bear with me while I do that. And could someone just confirm that they can see my presentation, please?
Confirmed.
Is there any
Yes.
chance we could have it up on the main screen?
Yeah.
Just hold fire, Linda.
Okay.
I think it's a good question, but we might be getting questions to ask.
It'll be a minute or two. Carry on.
Will I get started?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. Firstly, I'd just like to recognise wholeheartedly that the decision to lower this speed limit, you feel like we haven't listened to you or to your community, and this is Wellington, if you like, that's calling the shots on you. For Waka Kotahi, it really comes down to what we can do right now to save lives on your roads. Lowering the speed limit is the best tool that we've got to be able to make a difference from mid-February, and that this is backed up by technical assessment and expert opinion. What I'm going to present to you today is not new information. The aim is simply to refresh you with the broader context of our vision, where no one is killed or seriously injured on our roads, and how together we need to plan to get there. On State Highway 5, an 80km/h speed limit, combined with the Stay Alive on 5 campaign, robust road policing, the continued maintenance improvements that we've seen past season and this season, will mean that we will give people that are travelling on your road the very best chance of getting where they need to go safely. I also want to address today the concerns about the economic impacts on the region and our businesses. You're right, State Highway 5 is a critical connection north, and it is absolutely vital to the success of your region. Although as an organisation, we're responsible for delivering safer transport systems, and we must put safety first. I cannot stress that strongly enough to you all, that our priority is to prevent people from being killed or seriously injured on our roads. Keeping people safe and achieving our Road to Zero ambitions, which is part of your regional land transport plan, is one of the most critical things that Waka Kotahi is responsible for. So let's just wind it back very briefly to the why. As a country and as transport leaders in your region, we must change the way that we think about safety and how many people we are willing to let die on our roads. Vision Zero and the Safe System are not unique to New Zealand. They are consistent with approaches adopted by the safest countries around the world and are in step with the United Nations' current approach to global road safety. The Australian government have committed to Vision Zero deaths and serious injuries by 2050. And the Swedish Parliament adopted Vision Zero way back in 1997. And in just over 2 decades, the different stakeholders there have worked proactively together towards achieving the goal of zero deaths and serious injuries. Since that time, the number of traffic fatalities there have more than halved, while at the same time, the volume of traffic has increased dramatically. Interestingly, a study in New Zealand has found that for around 70% of crashes across the country where vehicle occupants were seriously injured, drivers had generally followed the road rules. Rather than being reckless or having dangerous behaviour, people had simply made poor decisions or something unexpected had happened. If we strengthen all parts of the system, then when somebody makes a mistake or something goes wrong, or one part of the system fails, the other parts are still there to protect people that use your roads. Our modelling predicts that around 60% of the Vision Zero target could be achieved through a combination of infrastructure improvements, for example, things like median barriers, intersection treatments, speed limit changes on the highest risk parts of our network, both urban and rural, and increased enforcement through safety cameras and officer-issued infringement notices. In order to achieve Vision Zero, we have accepted that the safety of people must be put before efficiency and travel time. Achieving Vision Zero and a safe system requires us all to change our methods, but importantly, our mindsets through the life cycle of activities that we are all collectively responsible for. Together, we've got to lead a shift across New Zealand and across the transport system. Waka Kotahi, we have a heavy dependence on the Ministry of Transport, the New Zealand Police, and you, our local council partners, and the roading partners to help us achieve this. Currently, some of the interventions are not universally popular, and in the short term, I completely recognise that the decisions that we are making to save people's lives are getting pushback. But we believe that this is our opportunity to work together to save lives and make people safe on our roads. And sometimes that's really difficult. These are hard decisions. 40 years ago, bearing in mind I wasn't in New Zealand then, but it was a similar situation in the UK, it was socially acceptable to smoke everywhere, to have a few drinks down the pub, to get in your car, not bother to put your seatbelt on, and to drive home. That was fine. But today, that's totally unacceptable. And with Road to Zero, we're at a very, very similar stage. We have the evidence, we've got the vision and the strategy, and we're beginning to make changes. And change can be a really unwelcome, uncertain kind of feeling for many of us. Coordination and alignment is really crucial to making that change together. So on to the things that you really want to know about. So we can all agree together that there needs to be greater certainty and a much more strategic approach to how the State Highway 5 corridor is managed. This goes to your point that it is a lifeline corridor, I think Martin said in the media. It's a lifeline for the region, and we think that we need to be better at showing you what those future improvements could look like and involve you in that process. What's outlined on this slide is what we're currently looking at. Working with your staff and keeping you regularly updated has been noted as something that we need to do better. And Rob and Sarah that are on the call today and I will all ensure that this happens. We're looking at infrastructure improvements to make the road safer. So for the entire section, that consists of things like shoulder widening, wide centre lines, side barriers, and some intersection improvements. With regards to the commitment of funding, the pre-implementation phase, which in regular language includes things like the detailed design, the money for that is committed. The detailed design needs to be completed before we can apply for funding to move into the implementation phase, which includes things like construction and the property requirements. That is why it's left as probable in terms of its status for funding. Aligned with your commitment to the State Highway 5 corridor, we're focusing on the longer term. So a programme business case which sets out the strategic long-term plan to address the safety, the reliability and resilience of the route is awaiting funding approval. We're expecting to get about 400,000 for that business case, and we expect it to take around 12 months to complete. We've also identified safety improvement investment on State Highway 5 over the next 3 NLTP periods. Crucially important to me and to Sarah and Rob is that the engagement with you, iwi and the community is a critical part of the business case process. Planning for the long term together, those conversations and your local knowledge help influence the outcomes that we'll be seeking to achieve through that business case process. I'd like to take some time to just address a lot of the common themes that have been picked up since the decision has been made, and those that were raised with us directly in the meeting last Friday. Much of this has been in the media as well, and also in our response to the Hastings District Council submission. So I'm just going to run through each of these so that you've got the same information as me. So concerns that our consultation has not been meaningful. Due to the high-risk nature of this section of State Highway 5, we did move straight to consultation phase in order to be able to have the benefits of the changes implemented as quickly as possible. After the decision was made, we spoke with key stakeholders, including emergency services and councils, before launching formal consultation. The question that we asked was, please tell us if there are any other factors we should consider when making a decision on the speed limit changes proposed. The consultation phase is there to seek valuable local and community input, so we can consider wider factors and context that we may not otherwise be aware of before confirming our decisions. For clarity, it is not a vote. Consultation is not asking people if they are for or against a speed limit. Rather, what else it is that we need to consider over and above the technical analysis, the average speed and the crash analysis. The submission information is important, and it will feed into the safety infrastructure improvements, and it will also be revisited and taken into consideration in the programme business case. The cause of crashes are not speed related. Regardless of the cause of crash, the single greatest determinant of the outcome of a crash is the speed at which the vehicle is travelling when the crash occurs. That's indisputable. In many crashes, the speed limit in place was higher than the assessed safe speed on that road. So even if the driver wasn't speeding, they were still travelling too fast to be safe. The impact on your economy and tourism. The technical assessment shows that the 80-kilometre speed limit recognises the importance of the route and will ensure more consistent travel time. While lower speeds will have an impact on travel time, the potential to save people's lives, prevent serious injuries, and reduce the economic and social costs from crashes remains our priority. The Road to Zero programme is required to deliver these safety benefits and looks at the social cost of people being killed and the reliability of your network. It does not focus on economic outcomes. Why did we take a blanket approach? This is one that's been coming up quite frequently. Why not do this in segments? An additional technical review step was completed to ensure the robustness of our original technical assessment and to confirm the appropriateness of an 80-kilometre speed limit. To understand the overall impact on the corridor, the stretch was originally assessed in 6 sections, which we then further refined into 15 sections. The additional assessment also confirmed the 80-kilometre speed limit was the safe and appropriate speed for each individual section and therefore has been applied to 76 kilometres of State Highway 5. A lack of strategy for State Highway 5. I think I addressed this in the previous slide, but one thing I would like to acknowledge, in the ideal world, the programme business case would have come first. However, in this instance, the national programme of Road to Zero is the priority for implementation. The speed reduction is intended to complement the infrastructure investment that will come. Engagement with iwi. Yep, completely agree. We should have done better here. When iwi partners were emailed to ask for meetings, we didn't get a response, but we didn't follow up with them. We're going to address that now, and I do acknowledge it is not appropriate and it's not good process. Underinvestment in the road is one that we've heard quite a lot of discussion about from both maintenance and from infrastructure improvements. In June 2021, we completed $2.5 million worth of safety improvements on State Highway 5. These improvements included 200 new signs for road curves, safety improvements to the entrance of public toilets, Tarawera Cafe, the installation of safety barriers throughout 15 selected sites, installation of approximately 35 kilometres of high performance edge lines, and improvements to the merging of 9 passing lanes. There are passing lanes. As part of the maintenance and operations, we forecasted around 2.9 million for our team to maintain State Highway 5 over the next year. And to date, this season, our contractor has completed 17 reseal sites of over 10 kilometres in total and 3 surface rehab sites. The classification of the road has come up as well in our technical process. The road is classified as a rural state highway. Early in the assessment process, some of the sections were classified as rural residential in the Megamaps tool. That's the high-level first cut view of the corridor. This was corrected throughout our validation and technical assessment of what the safe and appropriate speed should be, as per the speed management guide. And then lastly, it's come up recently, is what does permanent speed limit actually mean? It means that the speed limit will not be increased back to 100 kilometres an hour. The proposed safety improvements will bring the road up to a standard to meet the safe and appropriate new speed of 80 kilometres per hour. Just to wrap up, momentum is gaining on a vision for improved safety on our roads. And if you're like me, I've been watching the media coverage very closely. In January, Simon Wilson from the New Zealand Herald wrote a 5-part series on road safety strategies where experts, politicians and residents shared their views. Minister Wood also took the interesting step to pen an opinion piece that went out in the Herald recently. And I'm just going to take some comments from his opinion piece. That we need a comprehensive approach that takes what we know about deaths and serious injuries on our roads and implements changes that we know will make a difference. This is not about any single initiative, but about how we develop a safe system that includes safe vehicles, safe speeds, safe road use, and safer roads. So when Simon Wilson puts forward his evidence that safer speeds make a difference, he's right. But when Greg Murphy argues that good driver education is important, he's also right. And when Stephen Joyce states that a well-engineered road will make a difference, he's right too. Under Road to Zero, we are investing heavily in all of these areas at record levels, with more than $10 billion allocated over the next decade to save people's lives. The key thing about Road to Zero is that it recognises that we're all human, and even if we all think we're great drivers, we can all make a mistake. This is why we've got to address this elephant in the room together, and that is the speed that we're prepared to travel at. Speaking really, really honestly, this is one of the most difficult areas for us to discuss and tackle because the evidence and the wealth of research done on this and public opinion are often at odds. Speed makes a major difference. Whakaputai has already done a lot of the heavy lifting here to set ourselves up for the right path towards Vision Zero. And everyone, all of you, have a role to play in shaping that change. What we were doing here is considering the range of interventions that we have and the best possible combination of them to protect vulnerable humans when they make a mistake. These hard conversations are happening right across the country. Median barriers, roundabouts, lowering speed limits, they all bring about different reactions in different communities. We need those in leadership positions like you to value human life and to value it more highly than anyone's desire to drive at a random historically set speed. We need to value life more highly than people's fear of something new and of change. Reducing speeds on our streets and roads means hundreds of us over the year will get to keep living our lives. Your role as leaders for transport in your region is fundamental to the success of what we're here to do. And while I acknowledge that we're not aligned on this, I trust that apart from this, we will be able to continue to work constructively and positively together within your community. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Linda, for your time. And I did give you a good 20 minutes there. I think you covered a lot of helpful ground, that provides some context for our discussion. So thank you for taking the time to put that together and sharing that with us. I have let Linda speak, I guess, longer than I'm hoping the rest of you will. But then she is carrying the burden of perhaps one side of the debate. So,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
could we ask Linda to send her presentation to me? We can distribute it.
Yes, Linda, could you fire that through to Peter? All right. And of course, it's available on YouTube. Now, I'm going to take questions in moderation. And, so that doesn't mean question followed up by another question, followed up by another question, followed up by another question. That's what I do in court. That's not what we're doing here. A question is something that isn't a paragraph and a statement with "do you agree?" It's entirely leading, but a question is sharp, focused, something you're trying to find out that you don't know, as opposed to a speech, because you can do a speech later, that would help the debate later. So. I will start with non-voting members. Do advisory members have any questions of Linda that are burning a hole in their pocket? Paul,
Chair.
and welcome to you, by the way. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Linda, just changes about taking people on a journey. So my question is, why was a 90-kilometre speed limit not considered? Thank you.
I might just defer to my colleague, Rob Partridge, to answer that one, if I may.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Yeah. So, although I'm not here as a technical expert in the technical speed assessment, the tools that we have at Wakakotahi indicate that that this was safe and appropriate speed has been identified for the section as 80 kilometres an hour. That 90 is a non-standard speed limit, but I think even though that has been used in occasions, the main driver for this was that the safe and appropriate speed is 80, and when you're at 80, reason why that is because that sees a reduction of about 65% in death and serious injuries, as opposed to when something's set at 90, we tend to see from evidence that only has a reduction of about 15 to 20%. So that's why 80 was chosen as safe and appropriate speed and is reflected in the speed limit that you see.
Thank you. Right, so Councillor Price.
Just one question. There was mention of 2.9 million being spent on the road about a year ago. Is that correct? That's not my question, actually.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, could you tell me how many deaths there's been on the road since then?
Last year, there were no deaths on the road.
Thank you.
Councillor Lambert, do you have any questions you wanted to ask?
No.
No?
No.
Councillor Kerr? Yeah, Hazelhurst?
Thank you, through you, Chair, and kia ora, Linda. Well, I have quite a few questions, but I'm sure Chair will tell me how many I'm allowed to ask.
How many have you got?
Well, let's start with, so has Waka Kotahi done a crash analysis to identify the real causes of the crashes on our Napier Topol Road? And so we can be absolutely sure that the speed limit reduction is going to be the right solution for our community and our road users. I'll start with that one. Thank you.
I'll ask Rob Partridge to confirm yes or no, but I will refer back to the statement that I made in my presentation, that we know that regardless of the actual cause of the crash, the greatest single determinant of the outcome of that crash is the speed at which the vehicle is travelling when the crash occurs.
Thanks, Linda. I think, that is a question that obviously Craig Thu has asked as well, and we will be responding formally on that and having a meeting with Craig on the technical assessment aspects. But in terms of crash-by-crash data, what we tend to do when we're looking at these things is we've actually got to look at the crash risk. We look at them on a holistic corridor scale. If we look at every single individual crash, we've done that in the past when we talked things about black spots and things like that, but actually we look at the overall trend of death and serious injuries. And as Linda has pointed out, speed is the key determinant in the severity of that crash. So I would have to get back to you on exactly whether those were looked at, in time.
Thank you. We would like that information brought back to us. Thank you. Second question is, I'm interested in the GPS pillar and whether this has been taken into account, and that's improving freight connections. Was any economic impact analysis completed through this whole process?
The improving of the freight connections takes in not just road, but also rail and coastal shipping, particularly when we look at the growing emphasis on decarbonisation of our transport system. So it is important to look at that pillar in alignment with the other pillars. But I would say that when we look at, and as I mentioned in my presentation, the technical assessment shows that 80 kilometres per hour speed limit recognises the importance and balances the importance of the route and ensures more consistent travel times. But we know that lower speed limits will impact the travel time, but it has a greater potential to save people's lives, prevent serious injuries, and reduce the economic and social costs that we incur as a country when people are killed on our roads. And that cost is substantial, particularly to the families.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, the question really is about our region and our Napier Topol Road and not the wider nation. And I wonder if that information has been shared, whether the port has been part of this decision making when we talk about connectivity with freight.
The port will have had the same opportunity as Hastings District Council and the community to participate in the process through the consultation process for the speed limit review.
Just a question through you, Chair, around the funding for the business case. You said that we need a detailed design so we can undertake a business case. Is that how it works, Linda?
I'll just defer to Rob. He's very heavily involved in developing your strategic case for State Highway 5.
Hi. Well, there's actually two things going on here. The business case for the Safety, Speed and Infrastructure Program. The program business case that has been done, it's a national one, and so we have a indicative investment for safety improvements. There's a separate piece of work for a program business case for State Highway 5, which is also identified in the NLTF this year.
So we have funding to undertake that work this year?
The funding is sitting in there. It's sitting in there as probable, and my colleague Sarah is looking to work to release that money.
So it's not guaranteed funding?
No, for clarity, as I mentioned, we need to complete the detailed design to have enough information to then put in the internal application for funding. So that's why it's labelled as probable. We can't definitely say it because we haven't done the detailed design.
So my question through you, Chair, then must be, and it's an obvious one to everybody in the room, if we haven't done a business case on Napier Taupo State Highway 5, to understand your pillars that you mentioned, infrastructure improvement, increased enforcement, improved maintenance, then how can we reduce a blanket nearly 90 kilometres of road to 80k without understanding the full impact of all other safety measures that are required for the Napier Taupo Road, please?
For clarity, it's 76 kilometres that is reduced to
76 kilometres.
80 kilometres per hour. As I mentioned in my presentation, in the ideal world, you are 100% right that the programme business case would come before, but the road to zero and saving people's lives that use that road is the top priority. We then have the safety infrastructure programme, which Rob has mentioned, which will then ensure that the infrastructure is up to standard to meet that 80 kilometre speed limit. The programme business case looks at the reliability and the form and function of your road well into the future, and that is a long-term strategic piece of work. If we waited till that was complete to change the speed limit, more people could well have died on your road.
Right, how are you getting on through your list here?
I'll pause there.
Right, Councillor Kerr, did you have a question or two?
Yeah, I did. Thank you, Linda. My questions are heavily weighted from the community that I live in and a piece of the road that I've travelled for the last 30 years whenever I've gone to work. The community is exceedingly worried, and it's a genuine fear that the frustration and build-up of the slower traffic over that road, then opening up onto the Rangataik Plains. And for those that travel this road regularly know it looks straight, it looks flat, but it isn't. And they are genuinely concerned that this decision is going to increase the risk of death and serious injury. Then that a speed reduction may improve the outcome, but actually it doesn't solve the cause. So the question from the community is, how have you addressed their concerns? They've had public meetings. Unfortunately, you were unable to attend them, where they suggested alternative solutions, yet there doesn't appear to be any response to that.
Firstly, I'm not aware of being invited to any community meetings, so apologies if I didn't attend, but I don't recall receiving those invites. And I take our obligations and the opportunity, as many of you will know, to engage with your community really seriously. So if I have missed those meetings, I'd like to understand how that happened. We can maybe address that offline.
Yeah, my apologies. It would have been before you were part of this committee.
Okay.
And it was a community meeting that Waka Kotahi said they will not attend.
Thank you for that clarification, because I'd be horrified if I had missed that. In terms of increasing driver frustration, this is something that we experience concerns about in a number of areas where we've gone through this process or are going through the process. The the traffic backs up at the moment anyway behind slow vehicles. We look at things like the current average speeds of vehicles, both light vehicles as well as heavy vehicles. And importantly, what we do through our traffic modelling is look at how we can manage the flow of vehicles along the state highway. And what we've found is that, as I mentioned in the presentation, the overall traffic flow and the ease of that journey is actually improved when you lower the speed limit.
All right. Councillor Kerr, just before you ask any further questions, I just don't want, as I say, I don't want to put Linda on the rack here, but I equally don't want to curtail what we need to have an informed debate. I just want to have an understanding. Mayor Walker and Mayor Little, do you have questions to come as well? One from Mayor Walker? No. Is that a no from Mayor Little? Okay, all right. So perhaps
One last question.
Perfect, absolutely, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I was interested to hear that the road had been chopped up into sections. I think you mentioned 17 sections, etc. When is this data going to be released to us? Because I, as one, would love to be able to read it and understand it. And I understand Hastings Council has an Official Information Act request in. When is this data going to be provided? Because it has been well beyond, I believe, the 20 days. I'm on thin ice here because I'm not sure of the exact law.
Really great question, and yes, it's a common one as to why the blanket reduction, as it seems to be being termed. It was originally assessed in 6 sections and then we increased it to 15 sections. You are quite right, Hastings District Council have put in 2 very substantive Open Information Act requests which are nearing completion, and they will be with you as soon as possible, and we have also agreed to the request for our technical teams to meet together once that information has been received and digested by Hastings District Council officers to then go through it together. So at that stage, I'm sure council and officers will make that information available to you.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Mayor Walker.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you for the opportunity to ask a question, and thank you, Linda, and also thank you, Kerry, for your presentation, your deputation from the community. Linda, I just wanted to ask about the success of the Stay Alive on 5 campaign over the last 12 months or however long it's been. I'm interested in how much weight that had in the decision making, because obviously that was an intervention that which actually created some real success, and how much weight was put on that as a viable alternative for longer until structural improvements could be made?
Great question, and it is a great initiative that I don't think any of us can support. Want to what's the right words, that we will continue to all support. We know that as part of a safe system approach, enforcement is key when it comes to speeding, when it comes to using your mobile phone, when it comes to putting your seatbelt on. Enforcement and infringement fines are absolutely key. In some respects, getting a fine is a bigger deterrent, it seems, or comes with a higher priority than being killed. So we know how important this is, but it is part of a safe system, and that's something that I think we have to really be clear on, that it's not an or discussion. Because of the amount of media coverage and the interest in speed, because it is so highly contentious between the evidence and the amount of research that exists that lowering speeds and keeping them at a safer limit actually protects people's lives versus public opinion on that, we get really hung up on speed. Whereas as a safe system approach, looking at enforcement like the Stay Alive on 5 campaign, plus better maintenance, plus infrastructure investment, plus speed, it's all a collective. So what we do when we deploy all of these interventions, we manage the collective risk so that if one part of that system doesn't work, the others are there to catch them. So it's not an or in our decision making, it's an and it's something that we're fully committed to continuing to support.
All right, well, thank you. And I've actually got one question, although Paul asked mine. But it comes out of an answer to a previous question. I have this curious chicken and egg scenario in my head where it seems to have a program business case, you need to have a detailed design first. Is it not possible, here's my question, is it not possible to have a program business case that actually explores the options for corridor improvements rather than puts the option first and then tests whether it's feasible? I mean, just talk me through that, if we could answer that.
I'm sorry, you just totally cut out on me there, Martin, when you said, oh, my question is, and then I lost you. Apologies.
Just hit rewind on the YouTube. Now, look, Rob may be able to answer it. Can you hear me now? My question is this.
Yes.
Is it not possible to have a program business case that actually explores options for corridor improvement rather than starts with the detailed design in some sort of predetermined way from the get-go?
Yeah, I can answer that if you like. Yeah, I think there just may have been just a bit of misinterpretation on that, sorry, earlier, Linda. So I think normally when we have something sitting improbable in the NLTF, which is implementation funding, we do need to get the pre-implementation done beforehand. But these are two separate things, and so we are looking at having a program business case which Sarah is looking to apply for funding on at the same time as we're looking at the options for the safety improvements and get alignment between those things so that we can all hang those off a corridor management plan. So we are looking to align those two aspects. So yeah.
And can I just jump in and say, yes, because we are the program business case is a different process. It starts at the very beginning and all options are on the table. But that program business case needs to be aligned with the work that the Speed and Infrastructure Programme team are working on in terms of those safety improvements. And so part of the scope of that will be how we can align with the safety improvements, but it will look at all the other options, as Linda indicated earlier, and that will focus on what is the primary functions of State Highway 5 and how do we make that an effective and reliable route into Hawke's Bay and north to Taupo and further on to Auckland, potentially in Tauranga.
All right, thank you. That's Mayor Hazelhurst.
Thank you,
Is
Chair.
it essential?
Yes, it is. It's just in terms of us structuring our recommendations and understanding
sure.
next steps, please.
Sure.
Just a question really to one of the team. What funding is signalled in the National Land Transport Fund that is not yet approved for State Highway 5? And when we think of State Highway 5, we need to look at the resilience of the Mohaka Bridge. We need to look at all sorts of structures and engineering improvements rather than just speed. So in terms of us and the next steps of our recommendations, where we go to with the Regional Transport Committee and how we make sure that we get some action that isn't just about a plan, that is actually getting some serious funding. Could you please advise us what is the National Transport Fund to be approved for State Highway 5 and when will that be approved?
So on the slide that I popped up earlier, and I will get that through to you ASAP, in the short term, so the 2021-24 NLTP, there is the 24 million Taupo to Napier safety improvement investment. We then have the additional, the 400,000 that I mentioned to develop the plan, so the programme business case. In the medium term, over the next 3 NLTP periods, you have the Hawke's Bay boundary to Napier, the 100 million investment. And then from the Hawke's Bay boundary up to Taupo, there's an additional 17 million sitting there. The outcomes that come out of the plan, so the long-term work, will inform the longer-term investment beyond that for State Highway 5. I'm not sure about the bridge. I'm sorry. I would need to come back to you on that one, Mayor Hazelhurst specifically.
I'm sorry, but we are just going to move on.
May I please ask a yes/no question? And this is from the community, please, very simply.
Okay,
Linda, Do you know if the decision makers or the consultants had actually driven this road prior to making their decision?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now, thank you very much, Linda, for answering those questions, and your colleagues for assisting. What I'd like to do now is just start with the advisory members. I've just been advised that Linda needs to leave at 4:30. We're not going to be finished by 4:30. So I don't know what that means for any motion that we put and NZTA's ability to vote or otherwise on it.
Sarah is my alternate. I've got to catch a train. I'm in Wellington at the moment, but Sarah's my alternate, and I'll stay with you as long as I possibly
Right, well,
can.
Sarah's formally your alternate. That's all good to go. All right.
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Did you need to speak to me? Yes. The next item on the agenda is obviously, well, the next part of this item on the agenda, as I've just been reminded, is actually to hear briefly from Craig. Just checking we haven't missed anything there. That would be the next thing to do. And there will be, obviously the paper can be taken as read, but there may be aspects that Craig wants to draw to our attention, and an opportunity for questions of Craig on that paper. It's yours, Craig.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Chair. No, I will take the paper as read. Paper just gives a bit of a snapshot of the journey and the different pieces of information that are available. Probably two key updates which are interrelated. The paper notes the legal advice that regional council staff have been seeking. We cannot finalise legal advice until we receive the OIA request, the second of the two OIA requests that Hastings District Council has. The legal advisors need to be able to have a chance to review that, so we have nothing further to add on that item.
Any questions of Craig? Councillor Kerr.
Craig, when do you expect to get that information? Because this seems like the community was first consulted, I think it started in April last year. I would have thought that the data you're requesting, that technical data, I thought it would have been relatively easily available. And we're now in February. When are we going to get the data, please?
Are you able to answer that, Craig?
I have had, apart from comments, which was repeated by those who responded, I haven't had anything official. I think that question's better for Waka Kotahi to answer.
Yeah. I don't know whether, Linda, you wish to answer that. I know that there is a statutory time frame in the Act which can be extended. Are you able to give a sense on when that's going to be responded to?
Yeah, I think for context, I think we received it on the week of Christmas, so I think it was the 21st or the 22nd or the 23rd, and I would also note that they were substantive in the amount of information. So as well as the information being collated, it also has to be gone through line by line to ensure that it provides the right information and that any relevant and irrelevant information is redacted, so it's not that straightforward. As far as I know, they're nearing completion and that we're still within our statutory time frames, so we should have them through to you as soon as possible.
Right. In some respects, that is what it is. All right. Okay, thank you. Just wanting to get the process right here. What I would like to do now, as I say before, so we've received the paper.
Someone to
we're going to move that the paper.
It, yes.
Yep. Could we get? Yeah. Councillor Kerr, if you could move that the paper formally be received. I'm going to second that, please.
Yep.
Mayor Hazelhurst, all in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Right. Now to what I was proposing by way of a structure, as I indicated earlier. I'd like to start with Api and hear from the representative of the Māori committee on this committee. Is there anything you'd like to share with us about this particular issue?
Martin, can I just jump in there?
Yes.
I don't think an alternative member can, I think only one member from the council can put up and second. I don't think an alternative member can second. I'm not sure.
That's all right. True. Right. Okay. Could someone please repair that by seconding the motion? Councillor Price, thank you very much. If that could be recorded, do I need to put the motion again?
I think we
Are
can
we-
take that as.
All right, okay. Thank you, Mayor Little, for your close attention to the procedure.
He might have wanted to.
As you can see, I'm chomping at the bit to actually hear from people around the table as to what they think about this, and we're nearly there. Api. Thank you.
Mauri ora tātou. Tēnā koe, Mr Chairman. Thank you, Martin, for this opportunity to express the views of the Māori Committee who represent mana whenua I te taho tēnei Kauni Hera, a rohe o te Mataua Māui, the Hawke's Bay Regional Council. We are privileged to represent 4 of Ngāti Kānganu iwi's 6 tai whenua, comprising Wairo in the north, Ahuriri, the Whanganui Arotu, Heretanga, Hastings and Tamatiaraki Nui, Central Hawke's Bay. Many of our iwi also whakapapa to Ngāti Tuwhareto Taupo. Last year, 2021, mana whenua of the Māori Committee via Hawke's Bay Regional Council Transport Committee supported Waka Kotahi's desire to reduce speed limits on local roads throughout Hastings and Napier. Also during the past year, there have been many contentious debates through the media regarding the many serious and fatal accidents on State Highway 5. It is now February 2022, and as the iwi rep, I have spoken with Māori Committee members, also whānau and whānau, extended families, who live on State Highway 5, Napier to Taupo, besides those who travel regularly on this stretch of road and fully understand the underlying and challenging road user issues. Yesterday, the Māori Committee held its bi-monthly hui with the Regional Council and voted unanimously opposing Waka Kotahi's desire to lower the speed limit on sections of State Highway 5 from 100 kilometres to 80 kilometres. Our rationale supports the 80% plus of Kiwi drivers who drive within the law and who drive according to the conditions on the day. However, more policing is needed. Besides catching speeding drivers, slow drivers readily need to be cautioned also. Heavy vehicles need to allow light vehicles to safely pass with confidence, and vice versa. More relevant road signage and markings are required. With the never-ending maturity of the Kaingaroa forestry, more and more logging truck traffic is prevalent, owing to this billion-dollar industry being a major player in New Zealand's economy. Continuous road maintenance on this essential arterial route to the Port of Napier has to become a national priority. Driver frustration is causing people to become impatient. They are making bad and deadly decisions. Our kaumātua believes this will only worsen if the road limits are reduced. Mauri ora, tēnā koe.
Api, can you just clarify the date of that vote that you referred to?
Yesterday?
Yeah, thank you. All right, thank you very much. And now I'd like to hear from Ian from Road Transport Authority.
Thank you, Martin. I represent the Road Transport Association New Zealand, and I'd like to comment briefly with some bullet points that I think have not been considered accurately by Waka Kotahi in evaluating the commercial impact of the speed restrictions on State Highway 5. The assumption that reducing the speed will reduce fuel consumption is not correct. Considering the topography of this section of State Highway 5, the reason for this, especially when heavy vehicles have to increase retardation time on descents to maintain a lower speed, then have less inertia when approaching an ascent. Therefore, greater volumes of fuel are required, and this leads to greater carbon emissions. I would concede that this is not the case on all roads that do not have altitude changes we face on State Highway 5. Time loss on the specified speed reduced route at 80 kilometres an hour instead of 90 kilometres an hour for a 50 max, which is a 50 tonne gross loaded vehicle. Northbound is approximately 5% due to the elevation, whereas southbound the time losses is in the vicinity of 19%. This can vary slightly depending on the equipment specification. When these facts are calculated using the average daily heavy vehicle stats that Waka Kotahi have supplied, this could equate to 93.91 man-hours per day, or $6,855,430 annually, as a cost to both the industry and the community. The largest impact to our industry is the potential 10 drivers being required to satisfy and legally replace the time lost. These are resources the industry is not able to employ due to the massive labour shortage we face. The above does not take into consideration the scheduled services that may not be able to be completed, e.g. buses and regular service runs, or a situation where a logging truck can complete 4 loads a day on this route from Mohaka Forest to Port Napier or Panpak, but now will only achieve 3 loads in the legal time frame. This equates to 25% of his potential income lost. So I just thought I'd put some key ones in there. I know a lot of other people have covered the peripheral things, or not the peripheral, some very good points, but I didn't want to labour anymore. So
Very much, Ian, that's helpful.
May we ask questions?
Yeah, look, I can't, we're asking for advice from our members, so I can't see any reason why not, no.
Thank you. Ian, can you just read again the annual, I wasn't sure whether it was an annual cost?
The annual cost, taking into account the man hours, and that's only man hours, not other ancillary capital or anything else, is 6 million, or would be, using the figures we've established, and the numbers of vehicles on the road would be $6,855,430.
Per annum.
Per annum, yes.
And can I ask once again through you, Mr. Chair, who would bear that cost?
Well, initially the operator would have to achieve his commitment to the customer or the community. So inevitably it'll affect CPIs and costs of freight, groceries, exports. It would have to be impacted. The initial cost would be the operator to fulfil his obligation.
And one further question, if I may. I think you spoke about needing 10 new drivers. Have you got spare drivers in your industry?
Our industry is between 3,000 and 4,000 drivers short at the moment.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you. Matt.
Kia ora. Thank you very much. I will reiterate that the police's position on this not only supports the road controlling authorities, all of whom are in this road, but in this room, but also Waka Kotahi in their efforts to improve safety on our roads. One of our primary goals is to achieve safe roads, which is preventing death and injury with our partners, and those include both those around this table now and those on the screen. And we endorse the fact that the Regional Land Transport Plan for Hawke's Bay is primarily to achieve a safe transport system. So we're pleased with the discussions on them. What I will say is that the government's road strategy, Road to Zero, identifies that in the event of a crash, there are physical limits to the amount of force the human body can be subjected to and all the emergency services see that on a regular basis when they are speeds greater than 80k. So I know my partners in the emergency world are not sitting around a table today, but you know, in 2020, when we had 8 deaths on that road, we were all together around those deaths. So for a pedestrian or a cyclist hit by a car, it's around about 30 or 40k that we incur those serious injuries and death. And I also note from the police's perspective that the councils around this table fought very hard to get the speeds around schools down to 30k with Waka Kotahi, and applaud that. In a side impact collision involving 2 cars, it's around 50 kilometres an hour. And in a head-on crash involving 2 cars, it's around 70 to 80 kilometres an hour. So we endorse the work of the Waka Kotahi to challenge the speeds on our roads, and indeed the other councils that are working on those roads as well. What I will just add at the end, because it's been mentioned a few times about frustration on the roads, and the police are the ones that they call when they are frustrated. And I have never seen in a long time in my policing career, nearly 40 years, anybody to ring up the police and say, I'm really, really annoyed at this person who's travelling at the speed limit. They generally complain about people who are travelling too slow, and significantly too slow, and too fast. And I mean significantly too fast. And by that, for context, anything over 15 kilometres an hour seems to animate the public sufficiently to ring the police and give us their opinions on what these drivers are doing. So for frustration purposes, travelling at the speed limit, whatever it is, does not tend to increase or decrease in terms of the demand that the police are put under. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, for that perspective. Very insightful. And yes, look, I am happy to take questions, by the way. There's no constraint here. I was just not wanting Linda to be unduly burdened with that. So if members have got questions of our advisory members, I think that's only appropriate. Councillor Price.
Matt, there's been a comment made about the lack of policing. I'm sort of after your thoughts, and I'd like to comment. I read an article the other day that says maybe we should go back to the MOT and the police, because if the traffic side of policing are there to do traffic policing and there's a domestic, you get called into it and taken off the traffic side of things. Can you comment on that, please?
Well, it's not really my realm to comment on, but what I would say is that no matter what a police officer gets called to go to, it prioritises on risk. So if there's a risk to people or property, then we will prioritise that over whatever else we're doing at the time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Mayor Hazelhurst.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thank you, Matt. I'm just interested in your views, having read so many of the Waka Kotahi submissions, about the community's concerns over the slowness of drivers holding up long streams of traffic and dangerous driving to overtake. And so, you know, if I think about the Stay Alive on 5 and the extra enforcement that we've had over 2021, and we have seen clearly an amazing improvement in driver behaviour through those 2 campaigns. In your opinion, in roadie police for a long time, are you nervous about some of the driver behaviour because people will be travelling at 80 and can't get past, and haven't have enough slow vehicle bays for people to pull over? So we've got long streams and roads of long traffic lined up.
So I think you've got to review that in light of the fact that the speed limit will be 80 kilometres an hour. Generally speaking, the speed limit is 100 kilometres an hour, so there is a conflict between the speed that the heavy vehicles do and the speed that other vehicles do with trailers and slow vehicles, and people who gauge that road as high risk and therefore travelling. And to some extent, you know, this kind of meeting and the noise that has been generated around State Highway 5 has sincerely affected and helped us in our policing of that role. We generally work on, you know, strict enforcement. These are the things that we know are successful if we strictly enforce a speed limit. If we're highly visible, if it is an ongoing process, but really important to that is if it's widely publicised. And the noise that has generated around State Highway 5 has meant that it is widely publicised, and they are looking for the police, and they are looking for the risks that are clearly generating the publicity that goes with it. And so we've probably seen significant improvements, just like we would like to see, where the community is self-policing. It knows that road is a risky road, and it is policing itself. So there is a conflict currently, which may not represent when the speed limit is 80 kilometres an hour. It doesn't tend to represent on other 80 kilometre speed limits.
Just on that, are you quite clear and confident that whereas people might now drive at 80 on a speed limit of 100 because they feel safer, that if you reduce it to 80, they won't drive at 60?
Yes.
Councillor Coote?
Not a question, but just a compliment. People do say the police aren't on the road, but they're definitely there. I see them and speed cameras, and it does make a difference, the police presence. So from our community, thank you, and love to see you up there more often.
I'll take that accolade on behalf of Stephen Knox, who's almost completely single-handedly driven it.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Matt, and for all you do for our communities to keep them safe. So, Paul, AA perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The AA completed a detailed submission in regard to the speed review of State Highways 5 and 51, and we did not support the reduction in the speed limit. Once a decision to reduce the speed limit was announced, we completed a press release stating we were disappointed in the outcome. We also stated that the speed reductions should have been targeted to certain spots rather than the 76 kilometres of the highway proposed. Interesting fact, State Highway 6 near Blenheim was reduced to 90 kilometres an hour, which is a non-standard speed limit, which hence why I raised the question earlier on. Now, Waka Kotahi have made the decision to reduce the speed limit. This has been publicly supported by Minister Wood. An extract from an article Radio New Zealand produced, Minister Wood states, "We know State Highway 5 between Taupo and Napier needs to be safer, which is why Waka Kotahi will be installing infrastructure upgrades and safer speed limits along the route. It is highly unlikely Waka Kotahi will change their decision, especially as they have the support of the Minister of Transport and a clear direction from the government to reduce deaths by 40%. Waka Kotahi has stated that speed reductions is the best tool to achieve this, and unfortunately it is quite hard to argue against it. This is not what many people want to hear, but is the unfortunate reality. We would like to see a firm commitment from Waka Kotahi to complete safety improvements, resurfacing, and in particular, rehabilitation of the pavement surface to our local highways, including State Highway 5 in the near future, not over the next 3 NLTPs. Pavement rehabilitation has significantly decreased, in fact lacking over recent years. Continual resurfacing and patching of poor areas has minimal effect. The existing pavement needs to be removed and rebuilt. More effort needs to be focused on this. Now, just some really quick stats. 2010 to 11, there was about 50 kilometres of Hawke's Bay highways that was actually had pavement rehabilitation. 19 to 20, about 3 kilometres, and I would suggest since then less. Resurfacing, back in 2010, 2011, we had 150 kilometres resurfaced. 2014 and 15, we were down to 45 kilometres. The skid resistance on our highways, 2010, I think it was, 2011, let me find the stat. Back in, 2015, 4% of Hawke's Bay Regional State Highway network were below the minimum standard for skid resistance. 2020, 16%, and that figure is climbing. So in June last year, it was announced there would possibly be 100 million of upgrades completed to the highway, and we've seen that number again. We've seen no concrete progress on this, and it would be unsatisfactory for this not to occur. Going forward, as the AA, we will actually focus our energy on the upgrades to our highways, and unfortunately not fighting the speed reduction, because we do not believe Waka Kotahi will change that. So in summary, our recommendation is that we focus on what we have a major impact on, and that is to seek committed funding for safety improvements, pavement rehabilitation and resurfacing over the short term, not the medium-long term. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. And I can see Councillor Kerr's hand raised for a question. Fire away, Councillor Kerr.
I'm just really interested in the size of your membership in Hawke's Bay, because I think that's probably more powerful than we realise.
Yep, 60,000 members.
In Hawke's Bay.
In Hawke's Bay.
Thanks, Paul.
Any other questions for Paul? We don't have Port of Napier here.
They were online.
Are they still here? Nick, are you there? Anyone from Port of Napier on the wall?
What a shame.
That is a shame. I did hear, yes, some commentary and speaking with someone at Port of Napier the other day, who shared with me that they weren't able to attract the freight opportunity of a Māori trust in the central North Island because of the slow travel time at even 100 kilometres over State Highway 5. So it would have been good to get that regional interconnectivity perspective. So,
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to phone Nicholas, or is a staff member able to phone Nicholas?
yeah, could someone do that? And we might carry on and see if Port of Napier could join us, because they were certainly invited, and I think it's an important part of it.
Mr. Chairman, we have a note left on the chat room that Linda Stewart is having to leave.
Yes, I understand that.
So
And
she has left.
So if we just record that at 4:30, is it? She was going to leave, and we've got Sarah as her alternate.
We are just trying to get hold of Nick.
Okay, well, we'll try and patch in Nick, but we do need to carry on with the meeting, and I'll step back. What we're going to do now is hear from our voting members, and we're going to reserve an opportunity and reply. Sarah, if there's anything you absolutely need to share at the end of that, you don't think that Linda covered at the beginning, or that's arisen during the course of what's been raised by the other members. And I'm going to start at the south, or in the centre of the world, perhaps, with Mayor Walker.
I need to give a lesson on the naming of provincial Hawke's Bay.
Fair enough.
Kia ora from Tamatea, Central Hawke's Bay. Thank you to the advisory members of the committee for your perspectives from police and AA and Ian from the Road Transport Forum. I think that's been really helpful. I think the perspective that I want to bring is actually what I see here is we've got a lack of trust on a really, really important issue. And something that has been spoken about by Waka Kotahi today, which is that this is about a safe system, and that in the decisions that need to be made, it's not or, it's and. And I'm looking at the tools that we have in our kit, and we don't have faith. We cannot trust the system that actually the ands are going to be there and going to be funded. And I think that's where we've lost the narrative on this journey. And someone said earlier about changes about taking people on a journey. And I think that we've got some really valid concerns from community and from the wider Hawke's Bay ecosystem about this process. And if actually we were able to live up to the words of Waka Kotahi about investing in a safe system, which is all of these different parts, then we might be able to have an intelligent conversation. But right now, we cannot see that the adequate investment is going to come alongside to actually make the improvements to this road that is required. And I think that is where I'm grappling with this, is that the promise of all of those parts that have to come together. And it's something that is specifically talked about in the pillars of what's required in the road operating framework, is actually about the interrelatedness of the different interventions and the different outcomes that we have to be managing. And in this particular instance, it's very, very difficult to trust that the dots are joined and that all of those pillars can be connected. And we are actually going to see improved investment in the road as well. And that's what I'm really struggling with. The second thing is that the role that we have as a regional transport committee in providing our communities an accountability voice through Te Waka Kotahi on these regional issues. And the fact that we've got to the point of needing to call an extraordinary committee meeting to talk about a position says to me that actually the narrative has not been followed through, even with those of us that are elected to be those that are accountable to our communities and to provide that into the system. And that's a real letdown that we've had to get to this point at loggerheads and have not been able to consider the whole system together. I hope that that's something that we can resolve moving forward, but it is certainly a frustrating position to be in, and I can see why communities are frustrated as well that we've had to get to this point. So I think that my position in coming into this is that while safety is absolutely paramount and that speed reduction has its role, I cannot see how we can have confidence in the rest of the system surrounding this that backs up the blanket approach that has been taken, and that we need to continue pursuing how this decision and the surrounding investments can also be looked at. And I did like Paul, your suggestions about some advocacy about increasing the infrastructure investments, and also probably about increasing and continuing the focus on education and policing as well. All of those things need to be considered in this, and not just one about speed. And I think that covers it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Walker. Right, now I'm going to go to the other end of the rohi and hear from Mayor Little.
Cheers for that, Martin. Hey, look, I'll agree with everything Alex says. It doesn't always happen, but hey, I do, Alex. And hey, look, Martin, we've been living up this way, my family, for over 100 years. I remember it used to take about 2.5 days to get to Napier from Wairoa, and that was across the harbour. Then we used to go around by horse and cart, and it just sped up from there on. And then I remember I can't remember, but I remember my parents speaking about the day my grandfather was able to take his own vehicle around. And you know, it's all about advancement, and that's what we're all about. We talk about, you know, connectivity here in Wairoa because we're remote. It takes us 2 hours to get to a meeting to go down to Hawke's Bay. And I'm shuddering to think what will happen once they set the speed limit on State Highway 5. I'd say 2 will be set at about 70 k's, State Highway 2. We just seem to be going backwards. Now, if I thought State Highway 5 needed a speed, it does need speed restrictions in a couple of areas, but it doesn't need a blanket speed restriction. And we talk about what happens in crashes. We need to educate people better. You wouldn't jump in your car if you're worried about a crash, and you wouldn't jump in an aeroplane if you're worried about a crash, because they travel a lot faster than a car, and you ain't going to survive that. So it really worries me that we seem to be putting these barriers up when we should be just improving the road, which I still think State Highway 5, it's fine. You want a real bad road, which is amazing, more crashes don't happen, and that's something we need to look into. Why aren't the crashes happening on State Highway 2 like they appear to be happening on State Highway 5? And, you know, those two roads just aren't comparable. So we do need to look at this differently, and I think I really just stress that NZTA start listening to people. You know, the AA, with all its facts and figures, are pretty good to listen to. I know the police are as well, but I do know police love slow speeds. But I just think that's not the answer, and we're gonna come to a crawling pace in this world if we're going to keep restricting speed limits everywhere. Do the speed restrictions where they're required, but not where they're not required. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Napier Port are now back online.
All right, so have we got Nick there? Who have we got from Napier Port?
Yes,
Thank you very much,
yes,
by the way, before I come to you. Thank you, Mayor Littleton, for taking the time, by the way. I know you've got a lot on your plate with State Highway 38. Perhaps you're just going to get online with Sarah afterwards or something, and State Highway 2. So thank you for
Hey, wait till they put the speed restriction on State Highway 38, Martin. That'll be about 20
back to your
k's.
horse and cart. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got the horses out in the paddock now ready.
All right, so who have we got from Napier Port?
Nicholas here.
Hello, Nicholas. Thank you for joining us.
Thank
Are
you.
you able to share a perspective from the Napier Port angle as to the speed reduction, please?
Yes, thanks for the opportunity. So I've been listening, and of course I understand the need to put safety first, and we're all about safety at the port, of course. But we also understand the need to build the right and invest and build the right infrastructure to be ready for the future. And that's what we do at the port, and that's what I think we need to take into consideration when looking at that road, that major corridor that links the Hawke's Bay and Napier Port to the rest of, or to a part of New Zealand, and all that area around Taupo and Waikato and so on, which is traditionally beyond kind of the Napier sort of area, you know, in terms of port, but is definitely something that we think needs to be looked at as part of the strategic and supply chain network for the North Island, and to be able to offer an alternative to ports that are congested like Auckland and Taronga. And Napier Port needs to be part of that sort of North Island infrastructure. So now if the main road that connects that port, the Napier Port, to that part of New Zealand is limited to 80, it will have an impact on sort of competitiveness and how logs, agricultural goods, just containers can move in and out of the port, and it will have an impact on whether some cargo actually chooses to go to Napier Port or chooses to go to Taronga and so on. So I think what we would support is to look at it from how to improve the safety based on infrastructure improvements, so we can achieve safety whilst allowing sort of the future development and the strategic development of the port and the flow of goods within the country.
Thank you very much, Nick. Has anyone got any questions about that? Councillor Kerr?
Thank you, Nicholas. Just a quick question from me. I know recently the Port of Napier has invested heavily. Are you able to share with us the quantum of investment and the purpose of that investment?
Oh, of course, yeah. So we are in the process of building what we call Sixth Wharf, which will be a new wharf on our port. It's $180 million investment. And the purpose of that investment is to be able to attract more cargo, more and bigger container vessels for the region. And to justify this, that investment, we obviously need to be able to work continue to support the region and the growers and all the primary industry that's traditionally in the region, but also be able to provide that piece of infrastructure for the rest of traditionally Lower North Island or Lesser North Island, and be part of the North Island sort of supply chain network.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm really grateful for you for taking the time out again and for that, that inter-regional perspective and the critical place of Napier Port and State Highway 5 in that context. Okay, coming back to the elected members, I'm now going to go very close to home, and that's to Ahuriri, Napier, Councillor Price.
Okay, I was hoping you'd put me after Hastings because we are supporting them.
I'd always put Napier before Hastings.
Good move. Should we get on with this now? It's been interesting listening to the feedback we've had today, because we are not, Napier do not control Highway 5, but a lot of our residents and people of Napier use it and are quite involved in the use of it. I've had a lot of feedback from Napier people saying it's just going to kill the trip to Taupo and they won't go. Economically, it will have an effect, and I guess that got shunted home today when you listen to Ian talking about the effect with just trucking alone, no other things, and then you listen to where the port's heading. I feel that there's been a rash decision made that 80 Ks will save lives. And I guess when you look at the facts and listen to the police, that's what it does do. But we've got to find a win-win where the world keeps going on. And I don't think that we've hopped in on the waka together and come up with a solution that would be good for everybody. By that, I think selecting areas that maybe you have to slow down on, and others that you can leave at 100 Ks. I find it interesting that, to a question I put, that we have done a lot in the last year. We spent 2.9 million, and Mayor Little, who I think would be an expert on roading, said how good the road is, and there's been no deaths. So there has been, with what we're doing, a move in the right direction without slamming a 80k speed limit on it. So I would like to see a little bit more liaison with coming up with a win-win answer. And I'll leave it to Hastings because it's their road.
All right, well, thank you very much, Councillor Price. I am now going to move to Hastings. And then what I put before, Nate, was, of course, the regional perspective. Councillor Lambert and I will finish the round the table. Mayor Hazelhurst.
Kia ora koutou katoa, and can I also acknowledge all of our stakeholders who have shared their views today. Thank you. My comments today and also questions come from our wider community, our community who lives along the road, and also our industry leaders and our council. It is a great concern to our region that this section of State Highway 5 continues to be undervalued, that Waka Kotahi has not followed its own processes and guidance while coming to the speed limit decision, and there's still no plan, no funding to bring the Napier-Taupo Road up to a safe standard. State Highway 5 is strategically important. It is our lifeline. It is our region's main connection to most of the North Island, carrying more than 4,000 vehicles a day, with 20% of heavy traffic carrying goods in and out of our Hawke's Bay region. It is the main access from points north to Napier Port, and it is an important element in the courier network which links Hawke's Bay with distribution centres in the central and northern regions of the North Island. What it requires is a comprehensive upgrade plan with investment and timelines that starts with a business case, and it appears funding hasn't even been approved for that. Our view is that, in haste to push through this speed limit reduction to date seems to be the only answer to safety on this road. Waka Kotahi has failed at many stages of the process. It has failed to engage meaningfully. It has failed to demonstrate how feedback was considered. It has failed to comprehensively complete technical work. It has failed to consider a wider safe system approach. If it had followed its own guidelines on public engagement and undertaking comprehensive technical on-site assessments, we would likely to be having a very different discussion today. By following its own processes, we could have seen the Waka Kotahi commitment to upgrading the route based on proper safety audits, with targeted speed reductions that are notorious for crashes that we all know. In short, it would have addressed the decades of underinvestment and the lack of care by Waka Kotahi to make this road unsafe. We note in correspondence with the Hastings District Council that Waka Kotahi refers to multiple site visits during the process, but in its own reports indicates no site visits were undertaken. Without on-site investigation, it cannot be possible to have fully investigated and validated real issues with the road. There is also no detailed review of the contributing factors to crashes, so it is impossible to conclude that the lowered speed limit will have a positive impact on the road safety. We also need to fully understand the impacts of recent increased maintenance and the Police Stay Alive on 5 campaign, which seem to have reduced crashes. Did Waka Kotahi take these into account during their decision making? Without all this information, we cannot know if the speed reduction will make the road safer or make it even less safe. It appears that this has been a desktop exercise, applying simplified matrices that do not come anywhere near providing the level of detail required to make decisions on how to make a route safer. What will reduce crashes in investing in road realignments and widening, safety barriers and comprehensive maintenance plan so it does not deteriorate over time? Road safety is critical to deliver freight both in and out of our region in an effective and timely manner. The increase in travel times from this speed reduction will have a direct and significant economic impacts on our local communities and the broader freight industry. As far as we can see, these impacts have not been calculated or assessed, so how has Waka Kotahi fulfilled its obligation to ensure the appropriate function of the user of the road? The community has been crying out for investment into this road for years to improve safety, efficiency and resilience. So what has actually been invested? What is approved for investment for this year, next year and the year after? State Highway 5 as a strategic corridor that connects Hawke's Bay to the Upper North Island. We need to see an investment plan for State Highway 5. I note Waka Kotahi's own position is that engagement is an essential component of effective speed management that contributes to meaningful, informed consultation with affected communities. Waka Kotahi didn't engage. 4 weeks with our community, only 4 weeks, and it was extended because somebody realised that they had the wrong information calculated. I am also deeply concerned that it hasn't listened to 2,000 pieces of feedback from our community, the vast majority of whom did not support Waka Kotahi's proposal and their subsequent decision to implement exactly what they proposed. It could look like predetermination, and some might suggest it's a tick box exercise. What we need is investment, is a long-term plan, a business case, and not a blanket speed limit reduction for our most critical road. Kia ora.
Thank you, Mayor Hazelhurst. Now, I want to take a break at 5 o'clock, understanding orders we shouldn't go for longer than 2 hours, but I'm wondering if we could hear from Councillor Lambert first. I then wish to wrap up with some comments of mine. I'm going to give Linda, if she would like it, or Sarah, it looks like Linda's on a train or a bus, an opportunity for just literally a couple of minutes if there's absolutely anything new that's come up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up a motion on the board for us to discuss and debate based on what we've heard. So, Councillor Lambert, would you like to take the floor now? And once we've heard from you, we might just break for 5 minutes, if that's all right, before I speak.
Tēnā koe, Martin. Thank you very much. Tuatahi, te me kia koe kiri, o tō kōrero. And Linda. I thought Linda's other perspective was, well, actually, I wasn't quite happy with it. Particularly the part that says consultations is not a vote. Yeah, I think consultation is certainly when you look at a person's position and take it into account. To say that it's not a vote it doesn't say enough about what actually it is. It should be taken into consideration, and to hear how many people have actually put forward a submission is, it's really a couple of thousand put in through the Hastings Council. It's just been recorded for future training purposes. Yeah.
As always.
As always. So yeah, so I'm a bit disappointed in the whole consultation process, as well as not seeing the our iwi representatives from along the internal corridor there. Personally, I was travelling around the bay and out to Taupo over the Christmas period, and I saw one sign, I think at the Z garage, about making a comment on the road. But didn't say actually about whether you like the idea or not. And yeah, that was pretty light on the ground. That was really, and the other lot of consultation I really saw was really the Stay Alive on 5 campaign. And I thought that went really well last year. So I certainly take the point raised by all the advisors. Ian, I really like the figures on, you know, it drops a truck driver's run from 4 down to 3. That is a big impact. The high hours you have on the road is pretty big too. And listening to Linda about it should be the whole of the community should be working together. And I think this actually shows that we didn't quite talk to everybody. We're not working together because our industry does have a say in it, as well as our tourism and our people just travelling backwards and forwards to Taupo. There are only 3 really major ways into Hawke's Bay. Either you're coming from the east coast, or you're coming from Taupo, or you're coming from Manawatu. I mean, you've also got Waikato Moana, Te Rawa 38, but we're still waiting out on that. And you've got the Gentle Annie Road, which actually sounds like it might be a bit quicker to go down there. But I take the point of the Māori Standing Committee and all the tai whenua. They oppose this speed limit, and the rationale sounds good. Improve policing and have faith in our drivers. I think the publicity campaign works really well, and I take Matt's point of view that if you get the community on side, you're halfway there. And I think we got to continue with that. We can't just not do that. Hard to beat Linda's statement about Vision Zero. I mean that's where we all want to go. But once again, as COVID tells us, we are always under attack. We are always looking out for our health. So, and some of us make it, and some of us don't, which is a harsh reality. But it really it's a statement that detracts from actual responsibilities here, which are about the safety on the road. Everyone else will try and do their bit on Vision Zero, but a lot more has to be done by the ministry to make a commitment on the road. I did not see a real commitment. That was a bit vague about whether that money's going to be there for the mid to long term. And the stuff that has been done, there's a lot of signage. Yeah, and I take the point that actually the roading improvements haven't been done, as was brought up by some of our advisors. So what, and I really like what Mary Alex has said, that yeah, it is a bit of a confidence thing. Why are we having a special meeting? Because it affects us all, affects all our ratepayers, whether they're in whatever council in the Bay, because this is a lifeline corridor, like you say, Martin, and we need to sort of take a strong stand about this with hopefully the ministry, and the minister will understand and put it under review. I would sooner see a highway that has speed up to maybe 110 in some parts, 80 in others, and back to 100, just like State Highway 1. But yeah, so 90 down in South Island. Gee. So it's I don't think when it says it's a permanent decision, I think that can't be quite correct. Road conditions change all the time, and so I'd like to see a more meaningful attempt at reaching the Vision Zero. Yeah, as we said, it's not just about speed; it's obviously a whole lot of factors, and they haven't quite been put on the table. Kia ora.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Look, I do wish to break just now for 5 minutes, if everyone doesn't mind that. We can all have our own version of a pit stop. I'll then speak, and as I said, over to Linda for a couple of minutes, if she's able to, or Sarah. We'll take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.
and to share a couple of perspectives of my own. And then we'll hear, obviously, from NZTA, and I've got a motion which I'd like to put after that for us to debate and address. So, firstly, obviously, no one questions the safety pretext. That's a given. It's a question of method. And I think Mayor Walker hit the nail on the head that if this is supposed to be a whole-of-system approach, where you don't just deal with one part of the system, namely speed. And yet we feel as a region that that is exactly what has happened. It's a cop-out, and we as a region deserve better. I see State Highway 5 quite literally not only as a lifeline, but the very aorta and vena cava of the interregional transport system. It is as important to us as the Auckland Harbour Bridge is to Auckland. It is vitally important to the port, which is vitally important to the region. And we heard from Ian the consequences for freight to and from the region and our competitiveness as a region from Nick. The consequences of that don't seem to have factored into the decision. It has been focused solely through the safety lens, and we understand from Linda why that is, but we as a region don't accept that that's good enough. If Auckland is going to get 14 billion, as Kiri pointed out, for a light rail system, where do we fit in a regional context on equitable terms or in some sort of parity with that? You think what's happened in this country in the last 10 years? Auckland's had the holiday highways. Wellington's nearly got Transmission Gully. Taranaki going to get the Mount Messenger bypass, albeit that we have a derivative benefit. Manawatu is going to get a new corridor to replace the gorge. Waikato has got the bypass. And yes. The Bay of Plenty has got the Eastern Arterial, which you can travel at 110 kilometres on. What do we get? Safety improvements and a speed limit reduction. And we don't see, I think, what I'm hearing from our communities, that is fair and again, not good enough. There's a curious sort of black box element to this whole exercise. A proposal goes into the black box and comes out looking exactly the same, and we don't know what happened in it. And I think the fact that we're going to, and I know Hastings has requested a more detailed technical briefing is vitally important, so that we really get to understand and lift the hood on that decision-making process, which is otherwise somewhat of a mystery. There does seem to be, as I perceive it, an element of predetermination. We put up in the Regional Land Transport Plan as the #1 priority project for this region, a 1.4 million program business case for State Highway 5. We get a $400,000 probable, focused solely on improvements sufficient to sustain an 80-kilometre corridor.
Well said.
And again, that is simply not good enough. The whole thing just becomes, as I say, predetermined. You end up in this sort of chicken and egg scenario. What we need is at-scale investment, and I think that's the real objective here. It is not just about speed. Speed is almost, albeit important, beside the point when it comes to a whole of system analysis. What we need is a fair share of Crown investment in our region, and we as leaders must demand that.
Yep. Yeah.
That's where I see it. I think the real solution here is that we need to be true to the whole of system approach, and we need to demand as a region the attention we deserve to this vitally important transport corridor. So that's really where I see that as absolutely universal across this table. Safety is important, but you don't just address it through speed. So that's really what I wanted to say in terms of reflecting on the discussion that's been had and the advice that we've received. Linda or Sarah, is there anything you want to say before I put a motion in terms of adopting a position as a committee on this decision and what we might do next?
Yes, please. Just confirming that you can hear me okay, bearing in mind I'm on a train with a mask on, so apologies. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, okay, I'll keep it very brief. You gave me a lot of time earlier and I value that, coupled with the fact I am on excellent public transport. I just want to acknowledge everybody's feedback today. And I also want to wholeheartedly, on behalf of Waka Kotahi, agree with your emphasis on the investment in infrastructure, the enforcement, the driver education, and also the continued investment into maintenance. I would like to clarify that there is funding, as we outlined in the presentation. And I would also like to clarify that the feedback gained through the consultation process will be taken into account as we go through the safety infrastructure improvements as well as the programme business case. Lastly, I have to say that I'm a little bit perplexed. I'll reframe that, I'm disappointed. The regional leaders would value time, efficiency, more than people's lives.
That's harsh.
We know that we can't do everything in a safe system all at once, and we have to do what we can immediately and then plan for the medium and the long term to reduce deaths on your roads. And I would call on you as leaders to make the tough decisions that are in front of us to reduce deaths and serious injuries on your roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. You know, I think we all feel a sense of, I guess, yeah, well, I think we'd all have our observations about that comment, and that it does put us in an invidious position. As I said, no one here is anti-road safety. It's a question of method. And to suggest that any one of us places efficiency over lives is really off the mark. It's not one or the other, it is the and that I think yourself, Linda, and Mayor Walker touched on. So what I would like to do now, if Leanne, you could put up on the screen a motion that I have put together, which deals with the position we might adopt and then what we might do as a region in terms of our relationship with Waka Kotahi and indeed the Crown going forward. Is that motion available?
Yes, Leanne should be doing that.
Just bear with me. Now, while that's coming up, can I just explain this? We could be here until Wednesday next week if we were to follow the standing orders about moving amendments to motions and who doesn't get to speak twice if they moved an amendment to the amendment of the motion that failed and blah, blah, blah. I'm wanting this to be a bit of an iterative process. I'm wanting to put the motion up on the board when Leanne can find it, or bring it up on the screen, and I'm wanting us to workshop it. Once we're at a point where I sense we've captured the gist of it, we will, that looks like the Biosecurity Working Party. Once we're at a point where we're in the zone, I'll put the motion and we can take it from there.
Struggling with that one.
How are you getting on there, Leanne? Frantically trying to find.
Yep, I think she's been working on that. She knows something else.
If it help, I could read it while we're trying to find it.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
It is that the motion is this, that we submit the following position statement to Waka Kotahi in relation to the decision to lower the speed limit for the, I think it's 76 kilometre stretch of State Highway 5 between Estdale and Rangitaiki from 100 kilometres to 80 kilometres. One, that the Hawke's Bay Regional Transport Committee opposes the decision to reduce the speed limit on a permanent or long-term basis, and formally requests that Waka Kotahi presents the detailed technical report underlying its decision to lower the speed limit, including details of the process undertaken and criteria for analysis of submissions to the next scheduled meeting, and we could look at alternatives to when that might be. and formally request that Waka Kotahi undertakes a review of its decision. And I'd like to add to that, including with reference to a 90km/h option. In other words, not just saying, oh, we're not going to look at it, but actually really testing that out and comparing it. And then should Waka Kotahi fail or refuse to undertake the actions formally requested, that the Transport Committee advises legal options to challenge the decision and seek to have it set aside will be pursued. And again, we can talk about staging and timing there. Perhaps more important, and I think true to the common theme from all of the kōrero around this table, is that we formally request that Waka Kotahi commit to a State Highway 5 program business case for road corridor improvements of sufficient scale, nature and extent to enable the current speed limit to be reinstated, with that program business case including funding to be confirmed by 30 June. So I'm not interested in a program business case that just gets you back up to 80k on a with a design at 400k, at 400,000, it gets you there. I'm looking at an all options system-wide investment at the scale and extent needed. We pitched for 1.4 million, and I think that's really what our communities are saying. That's what I heard Kiri say. We need to hold the Crown accountable here and get what the region deserves. The idea that we only get 80 kilometres through the program business case is simply unacceptable, as I think I'm hearing. All right, so there is a starter for 10. Now, let's just think about the best process here. Normally, as I say, someone would move a motion, it would be seconded, we'd enter into debate, there'd be amendments to the motion. Before I formally move it, I'd just like to hear from the voting members, including Waka Kotahi, if it wishes, regarding what I've put up, perhaps starting with Mayor Little.
Looks good for me, from my point of view there, Martin.
Just want to change the dates.
Right. Now, did you get the extra words on 2.12, by the way? I think we need to add, after 2.1.2, including with reference to a 90km/h option.
Definitely.
Yeah, got that now. All good.
And I don't... Okay, all right. So, Councillor Price, have you got any thoughts on the motion?
I think you've done pretty well, Martin.
On the right lines?
Yeah.
Mayor Walker?
Yeah, she had some there.
She had an add on, didn't she?
Thank you, Man. I just wondered whether there's some additional words that said, I've put them on the chat box, but actually I think I would expand on them, that says that we continue to support the safe system approach that includes the education and enforcement program of Alive on 5.
You just enabling that to be typed. Continue to support the safe system approach that...
Including the education and enforcement success of the Alive on 5 program.
Yep.
The education and enforcement success of the Alive on 5 program.
Thanks.
Stay alive on 5.
Right. Okay, we'll come to Rob soon. Thank you for those keeping close attention to the screen and the pop-up chat boxes, which I can't, even with my super goggles on, pick up. Councillor Kerr.
Well done, Mr. Chair. I just have a comment around the meeting on the 11th of March. I think if we're meeting on the 11th of March, we need that information from Waka Kotahi much earlier,
right,
so appropriate analysis can be done and research within that data.
Thank
so
you.
I'm not sure who can give us the time frame.
Right, well, am I right in understanding that there's going to be a briefing to Hastings District Council on this at some stage in the near future? That we could perhaps, what's the expression, gate crash?
Absolutely, yes.
And what's the timing on that?
Until we get the OIA information.
It would be subsequent to the OIA. So it needs to say something like, blah, 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 including the details, as soon as possible following release. I think we just need to say as soon as possible and prior to the next scheduled meeting, right? So are we envisaging with that we would have a specific session where we be be briefed on that
Yes.
detail.
Yes.
And then, so we can then reflect on that before the next meeting.
Yes.
All right. So the wording then is as soon as possible and prior to. Why is the word provides?
It's in yellow, I'm not sure what she done. That's just the changes.
Got a meeting with the minutes.
Okay. Who's doing the typing at the moment?
Leanne is.
Leanne. Leanne, there's a word that you've highlighted, provides. I actually want that to be presents. It's important that that's presents because I mean, they're going to be giving the OIA, but I actually think we need a presentation. So that should be presents, not provides, where your cursor is.
Through you, Martin.
Yeah.
So, can you hear me?
Yes.
So what I've done is I've changed the first word to provides in an effort to then go on and say that we need it provided as soon as possible and prior to presenting that to this next scheduled RTC on the 11th.
Leanne, but
So
we're talking about a separate presentation of the technical report prior to that meeting. That's what we're talking about, is
Yes, yes.
Oh, so you want it presented
Yes.
separately prior to that meeting?
That's right, presented. So it'd be like a workshop or something like that.
Or the actual speed limit, as in...
We can ask. Yeah.
And that would be, who are they presenting it to? To the Transport Committee?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. And, just say, so after the word submissions, in the fourth line, to the Transport Committee, comma, as soon as possible prior to the next meeting, right? So that might be another, it would be more of a workshop, I would think.
So, Mr. Chair, I wonder what the committee, how they would feel about us including before the 80K on the 18th of February comes into effect, that it is held. So it is held. We say, stop now. We want to have this information from Waka Kotahi showing the technical assessments, showing all the information we requested through the process, and
Before 18 February.
Yep, and for them to not impose the 80K blanket.
Well, we'll come to that, but just in terms of the timing, because I don't think it's sensible to put a motion that's absolutely impossible for Waka Kotahi to comply with. So I'd just like to hear from Waka Kotahi what would be the soonest, OIA notwithstanding, because you may be able to present what's up there without doing the full OIA. Would you be able to do a more technical presentation of the basis of the decision and the process before the 18th of February?
I think in conference with my colleagues, we would be able to do something before the 18th of February, provided we've got all of the information together. I would just note that the decision is gazetted. So that means that the decision is official and it's gone through, and the only person that I believe can stop that is the minister. So I wouldn't be able to commit that, this process would be able to halt that decision which has gone through.
Separate point.
Sarah or Rob,
jump
in if that's incorrect.
Separate point. We'll come to the current status of that decision at the moment. I'm just dealing with the timing of the presentation. Is it possible to have that presentation to us on a date before 18 February?
As I mentioned, I would believe yes.
Yeah, okay, all right.
And in what format are you seeking that? Is it in a physical presentation or just, a report? What are you seeking?
All right, well, look, what I'd like Leanne to do in the meantime, after the word possible, is just put square brackets prior to 18 February, and we'll come back to it.
Excuse me, Martin. Can I just make a comment? I was involved with a decision that the Hastings District Council had made incorrectly many years ago regarding the speed reductions. And that decision to proceed with the reduction of the speed limit actually got stopped, then it went back up for reconsultation. So...
Yeah, well, right, I understand. Thank you, Paul.
I've got to go to, so I'm sorry.
Okay, I think you're making that point. Look, so that leads us into 2.12, which is really the nub of this. We've been told quite clearly by Waka Kotahi they made the decision and they're not going to change it. That doesn't stop us putting a motion requesting them to review it and changing it. The question is whether it takes effect in the meantime. You could have them review their decision and it have interim effect. You could have them review their decision and not have interim effect. And obviously, you know, we can request that Waka Kotahi do all of those things and it could do none of them because this is a request. So my personal sense is that it's more realistic that we request that they undertake a review, and if they refuse, we then look at 2.2, which is the legal options. That's my sense of it. Also, from a legal perspective, if you're looking at the decision not taking interim effect, there's nothing to... Yeah. You're only really going to get an injunction if it's irreversible. All right? So if it's reversible through a court decision, you're not likely to get an injunction stopping it coming into force in the meantime. That's my sense of it, because it needs to be necessary to preserve our position. And it's not necessary to preserve the position to substantively review that it takes interim effect. It's not like the tree's been chopped down.
Yep, I said, yep.
And you can't put the tree back, or the house is bowled, or whatever. Anyway, that's possibly by the by. Other thoughts on... So we've got the square brackets, what's the date of the presentation, and 2.1 or 2.2, what's happening in the meantime. So, I mean, I'm broadly happy with that. I want to hear other views before we put it. I mean, I personally think on 2.2 you could chop out reference to 3.11, but I don't think we need to take legal challenge because they didn't present a technical analysis to us. We need to consider legal challenge if they don't agree to review the decision. So in 2.2, Leanne, I suggest just make that 3.12 or 2.12.
The 2.12.
Hang on, just Ian?
Just making a comment, I think we should change the 90 kilometres to the 76, which is actual in. Yeah.
All right. You can just say of the affected length if you like. Yep, 76k is good. No one's going to hang us if we got that slightly wrong. And then if you're down in your whatever it is, just the numbering reference has to be right there, Leanne, that's all.
Yep. Go to photo requesting to take action formally requested.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. It will start at 2 with agrees the decisions, and then this will be 3. It's just that I've taken it out of the minute document.
So 3.12 is correct.
So this will be 3.
Yeah, perfect.
Yep.
And that works. Now, I think in 3.2, should Waka Kotahi fail to refuse, we need to know by when. No, that's right. I think that's all right.
Mr. Chair, I know I've been a bit pedantic, but that 3.2 I think should lead with the Hawke's Bay Regional Transport Committee advisors, should Waka Kotahi not do as we request.
Okay.
I just think that sentence needs to be flipped.
Did you get that, Leanne?
3.1 starts with the Regional Transport Committee and everything else follows.
Oh, I see, yeah.
In that paragraph.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think pursued is considering as part of pursuing.
Okay. I'll leave it. It's just.
Yeah, I think that's.
I'm getting advice that perhaps we should use the word considered rather than pursued, but I'm of the view personally that we're going to need the OIA and consideration as part of pursuing. But we could say will be considered and I don't think we need to overthink that. Right?
Oh, good. What's he saying?
Otherwise, we're going to end up writing a novel. Yes.
Just interested in the committee's view as to whether we consider writing directly to the Minister.
Yes. Through you, Mr. Chair, I would support that, given that the local MPs have met and are tending to meet with the Minister and have already met with the community. And I think that the Minister also needs to hear from this committee.
I think it's absolutely spot on because, to be frank, our battle here isn't actually with Waka Kotahi.
It's the policy.
Our battle is with the Crown.
Yes,
and if Waka Kotahi's got an instruction,
yes,
get this down by 40k and you've got no budget,
yes,
what are you going to do?
Yep.
To be frank?
That's the solution, isn't it?
Yeah, so they're in a somewhat invidious position. Linda certainly is. Yeah, so that would be another action, wouldn't it? That, if we come right down to the bottom, and then we've got a new 3.5. The HB RTC will write.
Instructs the chair.
The HBRTC instructs the chair to write on its behalf.
Yes.
To record this position and the regional concern for an equitable level of investment in the critically important State Highway 5 corridor over the short, medium and longer term. How about that?
Yes.
Well done.
Very good.
All right. Are we close to a point where I could put the motion?
Yes. I'm happy to move the motion.
Right.
Thank you, Your Worship.
So you want to move
I was
the
going
motion?
to. I'm wondering in that
You move
last
the
no,
motion.
no, in that last paragraph, we haven't actually said we oppose the.
If we have, you go back. You go back. It's right at the top.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. But
Okay.
it was just in that paragraph, right? You writing to the Minister.
Yeah, it's in there.
Okay.
Yeah, on our position.
It's recording the position.
All right.
Okay.
Long day.
No, tell me about it. Yeah.
You're doing well.
You're doing very well.
Recording the position of the committee. Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Hazelhurst, would you like to put the motion?
Yes, I would.
May I second it?
Well, maybe you'd like to put it, Mr.
No,
Chair.
I'm happy to second it. Now, that being the case, we can now formally open it up to discussion if there needs to be anything further. And then I'll call for a vote. Waka Kotahi or anyone else may wish to now. We've had quite an informal discussion informing the motion. Is anyone who would like to say something about that motion before I formally put it? Okay. The motion is put. All in favour?
Aye.
Those against?
I would just like to formally abstain, please.
All right, thank you. The abstention is recorded.
Mr Chair, could we go around each council just for clarity and get each council to say yes? Is that
Well, no, is
possible?
anyone saying no other than the abstention? No. All right. Thank you very much. I think we can close the meeting.
Well done, Martin.
Well done, Martin.
That was impressive.
Thank you. Thank you all for your participation, Linda in particular for shouldering all of that and for your valuable contributions as advisory representatives. Councillor Lambert, could you please close with a karakia?
Kia ora tātou, me karakia tātou te manakitanga. Kia tātou katoa, te ata whai ato tātou are kia i Ukarati, me te aroha o te atua, me te pipinga taitanga ki te wairua tapu. Ake, amen. Safe travels.
Yes.